Who are some of the worst people in society we want to kick out? Let's find out, starting with number 7, Carlee Russell. Carlee Nichole Russell, a nursing student from Hoover, Alabama, orchestrated a high-profile kidnapping hoax that captivated the nation. Russell, who had initially gone missing after reporting a toddler walking along Interstate 459, was charged with 2 misdemeanors: false reporting to law enforcement and falsely reporting an incident. Appearing at the Hoover Municipal Court, Russell pleaded not guilty, but was ultimately found guilty of both misdemeanor charges. According to Alabama law, she could potentially face up to 1 year in prison with 6 months for each charge, along with a fine of $831. Additionally, restitution in the estimated amount of $17,974.88 might be imposed. The whole ordeal started when Russell reported to 911 that she had seen a toddler walking along the highway. Her abandoned car, wig, phone, and purse were discovered by authorities, leading to a statewide search and a $60,000 reward for her return. After 49 hours, Russell returned home on foot, claiming she had been abducted and taken to a house before escaping. However, the investigation revealed unsettling details that cast doubt on Russell's story. Internet searches on her phone included things like, "Do you have to pay for an Amber Alert?" and "How to take money from a register without being caught." Furthermore, searches for the movie Taken and bus tickets from Birmingham, Alabama to Nashville, Tennessee on the night of her disappearance also raised suspicions. And if you're going to learn anything about kidnapping, it might as well be from Liam Neeson, right? Russell's attorney, Emery Anthony, announced their intention to appeal the case to the circuit court, where a new jury would hear it. The police chief dealing with the situation was a little irritated that Russell was only charged with misdemeanors rather than felonies, considering the panic and alarm she caused. But he explained that the charges were limited by existing laws. The admission of guilt in staging the kidnapping brought apologies from Russell, conveyed through her attorney. Despite her public apology, the reason she even pulled this stunt to begin with is unknown. Maybe she was hoping someone would watch John Wick and come try to rescue her? Number 6, verified clients. A network of sophisticated high-end brothels catering to politicians, military officials, and government contractors was exposed in a federal investigation. The alleged ringleaders, Han Lee, Junmyung Lee, and James Lee, operated these illicit establishments in Massachusetts and Virginia. The Justice Department said that the brothels were frequented by a wide range of clientele, including elected officials, high-tech and pharmaceutical executives, doctors, military officers, government contractors with security clearances, professors, attorneys, scientists, and accountants. The investigation conducted by Homeland Security Investigations unveiled the intricate workings of the illicit ring. The brothels, housed in high-end apartments, operated under the guise of offering scantily clad models for professional photography at upscale studios. Yep, it's a giant wink-wink. The defendants had rented these apartments, charging clients between $350 and $600 per hour, depending on the services provided. Han Lee, identified as the leader of the scheme, allegedly concealed over $1 million in proceeds. Homeland Security Investigation said that Han maintained impeccable financial records, including ledgers detailing the daily activities of the brothels. During a search of Han's Cambridge apartment, investigators found bulk quantities of condoms and lubricants, lingerie, UTI, and pregnancy testing kits, fake eyelashes, $22,000 in cash, dozens of gift cards, 16 cell phones, and ledgers documenting financial transactions. The investigation further revealed that Junmyung Lee, who was responsible for booking appointments for customers, spent lavishly with a seized Chevrolet Corvette valued at nearly $70,000. Deposits in Junmyung's bank accounts total approximately $378,000. The verification process for potential clients was rigorous, requiring requiring them to provide full names, email addresses, phone numbers, employer details, and references to book appointments. The brothel's operations allegedly netted hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, which were deposited into personal bank accounts and converted into money orders to cover rent and utilities. The 3 defendants were arrested and faced charges of conspiracy to coerce and entice individuals to travel to engage in illegal activity, carrying potential penalties of up to 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine if convicted. And really, is anyone surprised that there's a bunch of very rich people, many holding office, doing everything they say no one else is allowed to do? Maybe someday we'll all live by the same rules, and we'll all be riding unicorns that fart money. Number 5. Added tips. Melissa Rodriguez, a waitress at the Booby Trap, an adult club in northwest Miami, was caught stealing over $8,000 in tips by fraudulently charging credit cards. The club manager became aware of the fraud when several people disputed the transactions, claiming they hadn't used their cards at the establishment. Upon reviewing video surveillance footage, the manager identified the culprit as Melissa, one of the club's bartenders. The footage revealed Rodriguez manually inputting credit card numbers into the merchant machine and adding substantial tips to each transaction. The manager identified 14 fraudulent transactions occurring between 2 days, totaling $8,050 in tips. Upon confessing to the fraudulent transactions, Rodriguez was immediately terminated. Subsequently, she surrendered to the Miami-Dade Police Department's Economic Crimes Bureau through her attorney. This was so stupid because of how easily everything would be traced back to her. She had to know that there were cameras everywhere where she worked, and she further had to know that, of course, people would dispute the charges. Maybe Rodriguez was hoping that a bunch of guys would be too afraid to dispute the charges lest they get in trouble with their wives? This sounds like a bad bet to us. Number 4. The inside job. Jasmine Weber, a former insurance claims adjuster, was sentenced to federal prison for her involvement in a series of armed robberies carried out by a criminal group in Florida. The group, as part of their criminal conspiracy, posed as law enforcement officers to carry out their crimes over the course of 5 months. Weber's role in the conspiracy involved aiding the armed robbers by researching potential targets. She used her LexisNexis account, LexisNexis being a data analytics company, to gather information on targets provided by the rest of the group. Armed with this information, the group then went and robbed these people. In addition to her research role, Weber went further by purchasing equipment for her co-conspirators to use during these robberies. This included sheriff's vests, law enforcement patches, and light bars to allow the robbers to appear as law enforcement. The crimes orchestrated by the group spanned across several counties in Florida, including Pasco, Polk, Lee, and Hillsborough. They would pose as law enforcement officers, making it more challenging for victims to realize the type of danger they were in. Weber pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit Hobbs Act robbery, which is basically extortion. As part of her sentencing, Weber was ordered to serve 5 years in federal prison. Alongside the prison term, she'll also undergo 3 years of probation. And just for funsies, Weber's criminal history includes 8 bookings in Polk County over 5 years, primarily on charges related to contraband, theft, fraud, and various driving offenses. Her background as a claims adjuster for notable insurance companies, including State Farm and Berkshire Hathaway Group, raises questions about how someone in a position of trust could become involved in these types of activities. The group was finally caught when law enforcement responded to home invasion robberies targeting a suspected grow house. The FBI initiated an investigation into the series of home invasions, leading to the identification of the individuals involved. Weber's conviction falls under the Federal Hobbs Act, a law designed to penalize robberies affecting interstate commerce. Beyond the prison sentence, she's required to participate in prescribed treatment programs and must pay a $100 special assessment. It sounds like this former insurance adjuster needs to adjust her attitude. Am I right? Number 3. Faked. Kristen Rhymes, a mother of 2 from Columbia, South Carolina, faced charges for allegedly fabricating a story about being hit by a black man in a Walmart parking lot. Rhymes initially reported the incident to the City of Columbia Police Department, claiming someone had gone after her while she was sitting in her car. Rhymes provided a detailed description, saying that he was a black guy, medium build, and wearing a hoodie with a jacket. As it turns out, Rhymes wasn't even at that Walmart location that night and caused public concern by by posting false information on social media. Rhimes had shared a post on social media which included images of injuries and described her supposedly harrowing encounter. She claimed that an unknown man approached her car, dragged her out onto the curb, punched her in the face, and attempted to remove her pants. Rhimes credited her survival to a passerby who intervened, causing him to flee. However, police contradicted Rhimes' account, stating that the incident didn't occur at the claimed Walmart location. Despite Rhimes later editing the post to include the correct location, authorities maintain that her injuries weren't sustained at the Walmart parking lot. Rhimes was booked on charges related to filing a false police report and was released on bond the same day. The bond for the false police report charge was set at $1,080, while the false swearing charge had a bond of $2,000. No one really knows why Rhimes decided to make up such a crazy and intense story, especially in today's racially charged climate. And it's dumb, because it's not like there aren't 1,000 cameras everywhere all the time. There's even those huge talking ones in Walmart parking lots, so she was bound to get caught. What's the craziest thing you've seen in a Walmart parking lot? Tell us about it in the comments below. Number 2, the takeover. A shocking case emerged in New York City, where home attendants allegedly took over an elderly woman's Upper East Side apartment after her passing. They refused her daughter entry when she tried to take back the apartment, and instead threatened to flush her mom's ashes down the toilet. Tatiana Abello, along with her mother and sister, had been living in the 2-bedroom apartment for 18 months without clear evidence of paying rent, somehow claiming succession rights due to their supposed familial relationship with the deceased woman, Vera Katz. Abello initially joined as a caregiver in to assist Katz, a former big band singer, and eventually brought in her mother, Olympia Oviedo Reyes, and sister, Victoria Abello, to live in the apartment. Following Katz's passing, the situation took a turn when the Abello family allegedly locked Katz's daughter, Elaine Schuyler, out of the apartment and threatened to flush her mother's ashes down the toilet if she attempted to enter. Despite Schuyler's attempts to retrieve her parents' ashes through legal means, the Abellos refused until they were compelled by the Manhattan Housing Court. However, even after the return of the ashes, Schuyler was still unable to access her childhood home and her mother's belongings. The landlord of the property is now suing the Abellos and Schuyler, seeking the recovery of the home and rent payment. The Abellos argue they're now the legal rent-stabilized tenants due to their claimed family-like relationship with Katz before her passing. Which is like, how do you even argue that? This lady passes away in her home, and because you were taking care of her at the time, somehow everything she owns is now yours? Hopefully these people end up living in a box out in the street. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned right here for our past release to find out about how these TikTokers decided to coldly take over someone else's life. Number 1, above the law. UK resident Priya Sahi, known as Queen Bee on TikTok, made headlines after live streaming her arrest for drinking behind the wheel outside a supermarket. The influencer was found drunk in her Audi parked outside the store, and the entire incident, from her removal from the car to her handcuffing, was broadcasted live to her 100,000 followers on TikTok. During the arrest, Sahi shouted claims that she wasn't driving and questioned why she was being arrested. The situation escalated when she began abusing Marcin Kozak, the Polish police officer who arrested her. The live stream captured her telling Kozak to learn English and called him a European whatever you are, which is probably the vaguest and least inflammatory racial slur we've ever heard. The video, shared with her followers, resulted in Sahi being arrested for a public order offense. In court, Sahi pleaded guilty to her charge. The prosecutor mentioned a prior conviction for a similar charge roughly 10 years ago, so this wasn't her first time saying idiotic things. Kozak, in a personal statement, talked about the impact of Sahi's continuous jibes about his nationality and accent, saying that she made him feel less than human. Kozak also talked about the challenges he faced as a Polish national working as a police officer and how he had to prove his English proficiency to even join the force. Sahi's lawyer, Sandeep Kaushal, offered an apology on behalf of his client to Kozak, saying that Sahi felt embarrassed by her actions. He explained that she was going through a traumatic time and was in a frustrated state when sharing sharing her thoughts live on TikTok as police officers surrounded her car. Kaushal revealed that Sahi, a single mother to a 3-year-old son, was medicated for postnatal depression and anxiety. The court also heard about Sahi's previous conviction for refusing a breathalyzer in a separate incident related to drunk driving. She appeared in court the following day after being remanded in custody overnight. Due to her limited means, the magistrates imposed an £80 fine. Sahi had to also pay £85 in costs and a £32 surcharge. Are we done yet with influencers thinking they're super special and how they want special exceptions in life? Hasn't this been going on for long enough? In July 2021, Kasai Al-Jundi posted several TikTok videos of himself dancing in the driveway of a $1.6 million home in London. In the videos, he was wearing expensive new clothes. His friend, Mohammed El Aboud, joined in and filmed himself showing off the 3-bedroom house as though it were his own. But it wasn't their house, and the two men had just murdered the house's owner the day before. Kasai Al-Jundi wanted everyone to think he was wealthy and living an extravagant lifestyle. However, the truth was he was flat broke and needed to find a way to make himself rich. Al-Jundi was a cook at a kebab shop who'd befriended Louise Cam, a wealthy businesswoman in her 70s who owned multiple properties in the area. Mohammed El Aboud was a delivery driver who had recently arrived in the UK. Like most things on TikTok, the lifestyle videos the men posted were not reality. The property they were filming was not theirs, but instead belonged to Cam. Surveillance footage caught the pair leaving the kebab shop where Al-Jundi worked carrying a stack of cleaning products. More footage with El Aboud moving Cam's BMW out of her driveway surfaced. Al-Jundi and El Aboud had met Cam at her rental property in North London under the pretense they were going to buy the house. Cam arrived in her BMW expecting a lawyer to be present to finalize the sale, as Al-Jundi convinced her he would be paying for the house in cash. But there was no lawyer present when she arrived, so Cam refused to go through with the sale without one. Al-Jundi and El Aboud then overpowered her and forced her to sign over her power of attorney. The exchange turned deadly when one of the men attacked her from behind, ending her life. Cam's son reported Louise missing in July 2021. Her family had been concerned about strange text messages from Louise's phone claiming that she had unexpectedly returned to China. Cam's son knew the texts weren't written the way his mother spoke, and he didn't understand why she would abruptly leave without telling anybody. Al-Jundi was the one contacting them, trying to cover up his and El Aboud's actions. However, the pair couldn't resist the temptation to flaunt Cam's expensive home on social media. Police searched for Cam, but their hopes of finding her alive ended when they eventually discovered her body in a trash can. At that point, the missing persons inquiry turned into a homicide investigation. Al-Jundi and El Aboud had tried to make it look like Cam had left the country, but the videos of them at her home were too incriminating for the authorities to ignore. Al-Jundi thought he would be able to sign over all of Cam's wealth to himself through the power of attorney, including her 2 properties. He thought their crimes would make him rich and lured El Aboud in by promising him a share if he helped commit the deed. According to Al-Jundi's social media presence, he was a millionaire with a string of beautiful girlfriends. However, the truth was that he was a broke cook working in a kebab shop and had a wife and 3 children. Louise Cam also wasn't the first woman he'd con. He would charm his victims by convincing them he was in love with them. And once Al-Jundi had their trust, he would take what he could. One of his victims was in her 60s, and after declaring his undying love for her, he stole her 2 cars. Al-Jundi fed Cam the same lines, telling her he was in love with her with the hopes he would sign over the properties to him. He spent months building a relationship with his victim until she completely trusted him. It was a trust that cost her her life. Cam was divorced and owned a business property and several apartments near Al-Jundi's restaurant. She owned those properties outright, but had a mortgage on the home she thought Al-Jundi was going to buy from her. Al-Jundi offered her $7.3 million for her properties, which was above the market value, making the offer too sweet to pass up. She wanted to sell so that she could give the money to her children. Al-Jundi told Cam his backer was a woman named Anna. Cam even received voice note messages that she believed were from Anna. Anna. The Anna Al-Jundi referred to was Anna Wright, another victim in his romance scams and a customer at his restaurant. Al-Jundi would send her messages proclaiming his undying love for her and claiming that there was nobody else in his life but her. Reich later admitted to being psychologically manipulated by the fraudster. Reich had eventually agreed to sell him her Toyota RAV4 and Audi TT, which were worth around $70,000. She handed the cars over to Al-Jundi, but he never gave her a penny. Reich planned on ending all contact with him once she had the money, but he always managed to avoid any kind of payment. Al-Jundi now needed Reich to be a part of his operation against Cam, but when he asked her to attend meetings as an interpreter, she refused. Cam was so convinced Al-Jundi was going to buy her rental property that she had already given him the keys. Al-Jundi handed them over to El Aboud so he could move in. Al-Jundi promised El Aboud a fortune and enticed him by letting him have Reich's Audi TT. At the time, El Aboud had only been in the UK for a few months and didn't yet have a work visa. He was working as a delivery driver and a warehouse worker for Disney, so the opportunity to acquire a new car and a nice place to live was a no-brainer. During their trial, El Aboud had claimed Al-Jundi tricked him. He claimed Al-Jundi told him that if El Aboud got rid of Cam, he would get a share of the money. Al-Jundi's actual girlfriend was a Romanian model named Maria Amarutke. She was dating him at the time of the crime and was at the house with Al-Jundi and El Aboud the day they met with Cam. Al-Jundi celebrated his unspeakable actions by taking Amarutke to a jeweler and buying her $700 earrings within hours of the crime. The shopping trip wasn't just about treating his girlfriend. Al-Jundi needed an alibi, and receipts from their transactions and surveillance camera footage would give him that. When El Aboud drove his girlfriend home that night, he confessed to her what he'd done to Cam. He explained it was over a business disagreement between Al-Jundi and Cam, and he couldn't believe what they'd done. El Aboud claimed to her that Al-Jundi made him commit the crime. Cam's family grew more and more concerned when they didn't hear from her. Al-Jundi had kept Cam's cell phone and bank cards to make it seem like she was still alive, furthering the confusion. Al-Jundi sent them messages from her phone, pretending to be Cam, and said she had decided to go back to China. Her family members responded with questions that went unanswered, and were left with no clue as to what had actually happened to her. Al-Jundi also sold Cam's car to unsuspecting buyers and used the proceeds to buy new clothes. Al-Jundi then filmed his videos for TikTok, where he danced in Cam's driveway, pretending her house was his own, and showing no remorse for his or El Aboud's action. Together, Al-Jundi and El Aboud moved Cam into a trash can that Al-Jundi arranged to have delivered to his family home. Party ended 3 days later when police found Cam's lifeless body at Al-Jundi's house. The pair planned for it to be picked up by a garbage truck and taken to a landfill where it probably would have never been recovered, making it nearly impossible for the crime to be traced back to them. But the body was found, and authorities promptly arrested Al-Jundi and El Aboud. Both denied their involvement in Cam's death, despite last being seen alive on a video feed entering the North London property where she was ambushed. There was no footage of her ever leaving the house. With El Aboud living at the house and Al-Jundi arriving shortly after Cam, they were clearly involved. During their trial, the prosecution accused them of preying on an older woman in an attempt to plunder her life savings. Prosecution highlighted how Al-Jundi deceived Cam by making her believe he would pay her huge sums of money in exchange for her properties. He forced her into signing paperwork connected to the sale and manipulated her to have her sign a power of attorney form that could have left him in control of her finances. When he texted her relatives to say she'd moved to China after selling some of her properties, they knew something was wrong. None of them ever believed they were speaking to Cam. Some of Cam's friends questioned Al-Jundi about where she was, to which he claimed she had deceived him and left the country with his money. Al-Jundi further alleged that Cam had defrauded him of close to $16 million. The prosecution quickly dismissed his accusations, as Al-Jundi had barely any money in his account, and since he worked as a cook at a kebab shop, he clearly didn't have millions of dollars to steal. Both defendants spoke through Arabic translators, though it was clear from the nature of his actions that Al-Jundi spoke fluent English. Al-Jundi blamed El Aboud, saying he was the one that committed the deed, and asked Al-Jundi to help him with the cover-up. Amiraqui also testified that El Aboud had confessed to her that he was the one who committed the act. However, when El Aboud took the witness box, he told a very different story. He told the court he was sick the day of the crime and was asleep in an upstairs bedroom. According to him, he didn't wake up until after Al-Jundi and his girlfriend left. Supposedly, when El Aboud went downstairs to find Cam lying in the living room, he was so shocked and frightened, he burst into tears. He claimed Al-Jundi called him, and El Aboud demanded to know what he had done to the woman. El Aboud testified he threatened to go to the police, but Al-Jundi shouted at him he could barely speak English and had no home, money, or family in the UK. Amiraqui contradicted his statements and said she never heard any shouting, as she was present during the conversation. She also denied the nature of her relationship with Aljundi, claiming they were not romantically involved. Amarikwa knew Aljundi was attracted to her and told her he wanted to get married and have children together, though she wasn't as interested in that kind of future with him. She referred to him as her king and faced accusations in court that she led him on because she thought he had money. Amarikwa was staying at the house on the ill-fated day when Cam entered to complete a business transaction. She claimed she had seen Cam in the living room sitting on a sofa before she left that day with Aljundi. Despite their best attempts at incriminating one another, neither man could escape justice. The court found them both guilty of ending the life of 71-year-old Louise Cam, and each received a life sentence in prison with a minimum term of 35 years. Aljundi and Elaboud still denied their involvement in what happened to Cam, even after they were both convicted. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section what you would rather have: the ability to travel back in time and correct your past mistakes, or the ability to predict and avoid all future mistakes.